Devastating and destructive, the Black Saturday fires which ripped through Victoria in February 2009 was Australia's most deadly bushfire, taking 173 lives and destroying more than 1,800 homes.
The most deadly of the blazes was around the King Lake area in Victoria. Today, a drive through the mountain ash forests nearby demonstrates just how big the blaze was. It's burnt out for as far as the eye can see.
This is high-value sawlog country, and as such, VicForests staff and forest contractors were in the thick of the action from the start.
Our role sort of initially for the fire was to try and contain or protect sort of property, and that given how large the fire was at the time in the initial sort of stages. Then it moved back to sort of containment of the larger fires, building large breaks around townships, protecting sort of assets, and then sort of even larger sort of fallback lines where they undertook larger backburns off. So yeah, the contractors were there with their gear and equipment working alongside DSE and CFA for that sort of work.
I was on the DSE fire crew. So we basically, on the day, because it was predicted to be so bad, we all started off in the yard and basically just waiting around for a call to go out, and we got that at about 11:30 and headed over to Kilmore, which is northeast of Melbourne. And pretty much just followed the fire from there over the next few weeks.
The tragedy of loss of lives and property was overwhelming, but the big challenge for crews on the ground continued for weeks after the initial blaze. Extinguishing the massive fires took more than a month and required a united effort to achieve.
Virtually when the Black Saturday fires started, our operations ceased as such, and all our staff that were committed there, up to sort of 100 of our staff were involved with the firefight, either directly on the line or also coordinating in incident control centres and that as well. So yeah, and that sort of virtually for us, it stopped our business for a month there to concentrate on fighting the fire, and then for us to work back into the harvesting of those areas.
While the firefight took weeks, it was forestry contractors who stepped up to provide much needed help. All of their heavy machinery, including excavators, skidders and dozers, were made available to the different agencies involved in fighting the blaze.
A cracking example, Black Saturday, we had in the Talangi yard after that weekend. A lot of the contractors brought their machines out of the bush or went and collected them after the fire, brought them into that central location, and we had the play of those machines for the next few weeks in terms of use of rounding up the fire. Everything from dozers, skidders, harvesters and excavators were put to use as we saw fit, and really we couldn't have put the fire out without them.
The benefit of using contractors isn't just their machinery. Most are skilled in firefighting and all want to work hard to protect as much of the forest as they can, given it's their livelihood.
A lot of the contractors that we used in this Black Range area were actually working this area at the time. So you know, this is their workplace as well as ours. So we were getting these guys in with a great fire experience and bush knowledge, but also know the local area and know the tracks, know the type of terrain, and they know the fire behaviour that they can expect from this sort of bush.
Forest contractors also have to be careful not to add to the threat of fire in extreme conditions, often downing tools if the weather is too hot.
We've got some big forecasts coming up of hot weather and extreme weather. We usually don't work in those conditions. The forestry usually want us out of here, so just so we don't cause any drama as well.
VicForests are working closely to make sure everybody in the forest knows the risks and are well informed of what's going on.
Yeah, Chris. There you go.
Dave, how you going?
Good, thanks. Yeah, Chris, just following that fire equipment and that for the year, just checking you've got the gear and that. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. It's yeah, all the machines have got a fire extinguisher each.
Yep.
There's a Rayco in the trailer. We've got our 400 litres of water and firefighting pump and hose.
Wildfire in these forests is nothing new. This is an old dugout, a concrete sort of bunker for the foresters of yesteryear to escape if a blaze broke out. You've got to remember that eucalypt forests are made to burn. As devastating as the Black Saturday fires in Victoria were, Nick, it's important that they can happen again, and they can happen anywhere.
The key thing, Andrew, is the lessons learned from those fires and how we can change the way we interact with the forest in the future. Tasmania has been prone to bushfires for many years. Dry summers and hot northerly winds can wreak havoc around the state.
The vegetation is very similar, the fire situation is very similar. Not many people now would remember the big fires in southeast Tasmania in 1967. There were 73 people killed. There were 173 killed in Victoria on the 7th of February, but the fires were comparable in scale. A smaller version of what happened in Victoria happened here at St Mary's, down on the coast to Scamander, where 20 houses were lost. Fortunately, nobody was killed there. But those fires, very similar to what have happened in Victoria or in South Australia, could happen here in any summer.
Almost every Forestry Tasmania employee is trained in the skills of firefighting. In the off-season, they spend their time at field days, such as this one, learning new techniques and carrying out various tests.
And that testing includes a physical one. You've got to do 6 laps of the footy oval, or 3.2 kilometres, in under half an hour, carrying 12 kilos on your back.
It's actually a test that has been used universally over Australia with most firefighting services. This is a moderate test. There is another test, a more extreme test after this.
And that's why you have to maintain that level of fitness and why they practice this in the off-season, because when a bushfire breaks out, inevitably it's not on a nice flat footy oval, it's in somewhere like this, big steep hills, and you've got to be fit to get around.
Certainly Tasmania Fire Service is the lead agency and has far and away the greatest number of people by drawing on their volunteers. Forestry Tasmania would have between 200 and 250 fully trained firefighters that we could send out if we had to.
Also on the front line of protecting Tasmania's forests is a network of fire towers set up to give a bird's eye view of forestry land. Fire tower operators spending 7 days a week all summer alone up the tower waiting to spot smoke.
So your fire tower operator's job is to look for small plumes of smoke, Nick, which then grow into big fires. And even today, it's not fire season, but we can spot half a dozen or so fires around the place.
And from what seems outwardly is a bit of an arcane method of spotting fires, they do still say that this is the best way possible to do the job.
That's when the excitement starts. Well, the first thing we do is we take a bearing on the fire. I call up the other towers and see if they can spot it, and if they spot it, they take bearings on it too. And we work out a grid reference between us to make sure we've got it in the right spot, and then we call it into forestry base, and they take it from there. Scottsdale Base from Mount Horror.
Good day, go ahead.
With the training of forestry personnel complete and with a network of fire spotters, Forestry Tasmania also carries out fuel reduction burns in a hope that if and when a big fire comes, it won't have the fuel it needs to turn life-threatening.
The third big ticket item, I guess, is the need to increase the amount of fuel reduction burning that gets done both in state forest and across the state generally. And that's both on government lands and private lands. The Victorian Royal Commission primarily addressed government lands, and they suggested to the government that they should be setting a target of about 5% of government land burnt each year. It's more important, in my view, to concentrate on strategic locations of your burning and the quality of the work you're doing rather than just a basic area figure.
Fire in our eucalypt forests is a very real danger, as demonstrated on Black Saturday when 173 people lost their lives.
In Victoria, VicForests continue to maintain close working relationships with forest contractors to keep them updated on conditions and to ensure their machinery is fitted with appropriate fire safety tools.
Fuel reduction burns are held in spring and autumn each year to minimise the risks and impacts of wildfires.